Bank of England has warned the country faces its biggest drop in living standards ever after Black Thursday saw an announcement of a 54% rise in gas and electricity prices from April. Some campaign groups estimate the increase will put 1/4 of all households into fuel poverty.
Critics say the government's pledged support to take the sting out of the increase simply isn't enough and fails those most in need. Now, our correspondent Nick Dixon is in Bradford this morning at the home of Deondra Richard. Nick, how does she feel about the support offered yesterday? Is it going to help at all?
Well, I think her feeling is, anything is helpful potentially and gratefully received, but Deondra has been struggling with energy bills for quite some time, so this is going to put her in a position where she's forced to make some pretty painful decisions. We're here with her, obviously, and her friend Abdul, who's from the local food bank. Deondra, first of all, what's your feeling about the rise?
Well, everything's kind of been rising since the start of the pandemic, so it was just a matter of time until, it got to the point where people really can't afford to do anything. So it's just really good that there's, local centres and community centres and, like the food bank that Abdul runs that will help with that kind of stuff.
What's your most recent bill?
It's my British Gas, £100,000 for December and January, and these houses are really hard to keep all the heat in. There's lots of cracks. It's really old, made of old bricks. So I feel like that's been affecting, the hike up in the price as well. So, yeah.
Have you been in the position where you've already had to make some tricky choices?
I've had to make some drastic cuts, so we need to, either pay the bills and go cold, or we don't get any food and we go hungry and my daughter goes hungry. So it's just about balancing, between the two and using the support where necessary that is provided in the community.
And Abdul, what's been the sort of broader reaction?
Well, Bradford Community Kitchen Food Bank have received a high volume of calls from people since the announcement with the energy rises. So it's just a huge demand at the moment. We're finding it very hard to keep up with all the deliveries.
OK. All right, well, thanks to you both. And as you can see, Ben K, it's already just piling pressure on households and families who are finding it very difficult to cope already.
Nick, you're absolutely right. Thank you very much indeed. Lots of people getting in touch with a similar story to Deondra, of course. So what should the Chancellor be doing? And what can struggling families do to help themselves? Joining us to discuss this now, we have the Chief Executive of National Energy Action, Adam Scorer, and personal finance expert Gemma Godfrey. Thank you both for joining us this morning. Adam, if we can start with you. We have a lot of very scared, worried, concerned viewers this morning who saw what the Chancellor had to say yesterday and welcomed, albeit a smoothing of the edges of the impending price rises, which all of them are facing already, but it's not enough. What was your reaction to what he delivered yesterday?
I thought, frankly, it was woefully inadequate. I think what the Chancellor made an active choice was to go broad and shallow with something for everybody, and that's going to be hugely appreciated. Everyone gets hit by price rises, but he should have gone targeted and deep to provide the support to people who are going to be hit hardest by these price rises. So what we've seen, £350, is going to be hugely welcome by everybody, and it's got lots of merit. But if you take the rise in October and the rise that's coming in April, it will still leave those on the lowest incomes facing a £500 price rise over the year. So, unfortunately, it was wholly inadequate, and they'll have to come back to this.
And with regards to that, I mean, because that's, I think, the point that a lot of people are making, that this may well feel like it's going to help some people. But as you say, these price rises, the £200 rebate's not going to come in till later on in the year, and we're expecting a price rise in October and then again in April. What would you like to see them planning to do? Because if they are going to have to come back to this, where should they be looking?
They have to look at direct financial support for people on the lowest incomes. It's pretty straightforward. This is annoying for everybody. It's challenging for most. It is devastating for people on tight incomes like Deondra. And so what they need to do is to take it seriously as a cost of living crisis that will have tragic consequences, not just financial hardship, but other emotionally and health-wise will have tragic consequences. It has to go deep, and it has to understand that this is a crisis that will last for some years. It loves its one-off contributions, its ad hoc arrangements. That's just not fit for purpose.
OK, so what is the answer? Because what the Chancellor either explicitly or implicitly said is, you know, we haven't got the money for this. If we start, you know, doing windfall taxes on energy companies, that leads to poor investment, that leads to the economy not doing so well. There's already huge shortfalls in the budget, highest record borrowings for, you know, years. So what is the answer? Because there's no money tree.
Well, it's the right point, which is why the choice should have been to go targeted and deep for those people who really need it. And we have to remember that the Treasury has made a huge tax windfall itself just because of the price rises through carbon taxation and through VAT. So one, it needs to go targeted and deep to provide the greater levels of support financially for...
Not to interrupt you, but because I take that point, but just to put his points on that, that is time-consuming and complicated and especially administrative expensive to get into place. So do you have an answer to that?
It's very straightforward. It's much faster to do it directly through the benefits system, or just to take the measure that they've already had with bill rebates and do greater support for a smaller number of households. It is not more complicated. It's more straightforward. It's just as quick as the measures the Chancellor. It's an act of will. It's an active choice about where you put the greatest levels of support. And of course, in the longer term, we need to see measures like ongoing price protection for low-income households. And you know, the best way you insulate people from the punitive effects of wholesale price rises is to insulate their homes. We have the leakiest homes in Europe. They lose heat really fast. It's too expensive to keep them to a decent level of warmth. So you know, let's end the stop-start process on energy efficiency and have a decade of delivery there. These are all things that government know. The delivery mechanisms are in place. They're as quick as the measures the Chancellor is bringing in, and they would avert devastation for households on the lowest incomes.
Gemma, it's not just the energy prices that are going up, of course. We know that there's a national insurance rise coming. We've got huge food inflation. The impact, it's the cumulative impact on people is considerable, isn't it?
I mean, what we're seeing is that families are fighting a war on all fronts. You know, if you own your own home, mortgages are going to go up because we've seen the interest rate rise. If you're renting, rents are going up. If you travel to work and in your car, petrol prices are going up. And if you travel via public transport, train fares have increased by 50% over the last decade. So it's such a tough time. Food prices, and it's essential goods that are going up. The price of milk, the price of toilet paper. You know, and this is really making it very, very hard for families when tax increases are coming. Job losses may follow, and it's really, do they heat their homes or do they eat? It's very, very tough.
Gemma, before we get on to your advice on how people can do it, can I just ask you one question from Adam's point about having it targeted to those on benefits through the benefit system? Is there a worry there for you that there are people who are falling into this devastated bracket who aren't on benefits that might lose out? Because that is one of the Tory arguments, isn't it, for not going that way?
I mean, it's so hard because we need to make sure that we're supporting the most vulnerable, and the most vulnerable in our society are the ones that are getting hit the most. And when we look at anything that's a little bit too broad-based, absolutely people fall through the cracks. And we saw this when the Chancellor came out and supported people through the furlough scheme, that people that were self-employed or recently self-employed fell through the cracks. And the same thing could happen with benefits, because ultimately there needs to be a system where people have filled out the right paperwork, they're on the right system, and if you aren't on that system, the money might not make it to you. So look, there is no silver bullet in this, but I do agree that we need to make sure that we're trying to support those most vulnerable, which is why things like they were looking at maybe removing VAT on energy bills, but that would help the most wealthy as well as the most hard off. And we really need to focus on the lower end of the society to be able to make sure we're well supported, because you know this is people feeding their families. This is an absolutely critical time that we need to help people.
So how do we do that
then? Can you give us some practical tips potentially that maybe some of our viewers haven't thought about that could help them sort of trim some of their outgoings and allow them to sort of smooth this a bit better?
Okay, I mean, so I'm just going to bombard, I'm going to throw out as many tips as possible because I really want to help people. So first of all, start with small but significant changes. So turning off lights when you leave a room could save about £14 a year. Turning off appliances that are on standby could add another £30 a year. LED light bulbs, they use about 90% less energy than halogen light bulbs. Yes, you have to pay for them, but the savings in the first few months can mean they pay for themselves. Turn your heating down. I mean, it's awful because it's still cold, but turning it down by 1 degree could save you £80 a year. Washing at 30 degrees rather than 40 degrees and only when your washing machine is full could also save further. A simple and actually much cheaper solution is draft excluders. They can be a really cheap but effective way to reduce wasted energy. Buying appliances, if you are, this is slightly bigger things, you can get more energy efficient, let's say a fridge freezer. That could save £76 a year. Also, there is help out there. So there is this focus, and we were talking before about greater insulation. If you have greater insulation for your roof, you could save £290 a year. If you upgrade your boiler, and there is a system in place to be able to help you, there's a scheme that from April, if you want to upgrade your boiler system, you could be offered up to £5,000 to replace it. And then, of course, keeping an eye out for deals on energy comparison sites. And I can tell you some tips about food, but would you like me to carry on?
Yeah, go on quickly.
Please.
Okay. And then just very quickly, also to help in terms of food, all supermarkets are offering loyalty programs, but you really need to make sure you compare them because not all discounts are equal. Also be aware that even shopping within the same supermarket can be more expensive if you go to more smaller and local convenience stores. So it might be worth traveling just a little bit further to get a better deal. And also things like signing up to newsletters and taking advantage of seasonal items that are on sale, especially those that are nearing their use by date, could also help as well. And also go to Citizens Advice. They have lots of schemes and grants. And also go ask for help. Go to your energy provider and see if there's a different repayment scheme if you're really finding things difficult.
Gemma,
Put
thank you.
your hand up if you need help, because
key,
that's
isn't
what
it?
people always say at the Advice Bureau. People don't claim what's there, so
Ask.
make sure you do.
Adam, good to get your thoughts as well. And Gemma, thank you for some of those very practical tips.